Hello everybody, how are you today? Let me see if I can get my camera fixed here just a little bit. There we go. I'm not getting much light and it's kind of dark here. All right, well, I'm glad that you are joining me today. We are back for another Bible story reading. And if you are joining one of these videos for the first time, welcome. What we do here is we go through the different stories of the Bible. This is for people who don't know what the stories are. Maybe you've only heard what somebody has told you about the stories, but you've never actually read them for yourself. Maybe you've just forgotten what the stories say. Whatever the reason is, we go through them so that you have an opportunity to know what they say and can participate in conversations when they come up. Sometimes people hear bits and pieces of a story in a sermon, but they don't really know the whole story. They hear blips of it, and it can leave them confused if they don't know the whole thing. So that's what we try to do, is go through the whole thing for you. Lately, we've been going through the story of David, but today we're taking a break. Real quick, for those of you who may be watching this video on YouTube, we go live on Facebook on a page called Get Clear Teachings, and you can find us there. And then we upload the live video when we're done to YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us be able to get our numbers up so that we can go live on YouTube also. Today we're taking a break from the story of David, and we are going to look at a story that comes out of 1 Kings chapter 17. We're going to talk about something that happened to a widow. And to give you a little bit of a backstory, Elijah is a prophet, and he has been going around and telling people, look, you need to get straight with God. You guys have been doing things that are not right. You're worshiping idols. You're not supposed to be doing that. And some bad stuff's going to happen to you. Well, King Ahab is now king, and he has married Jezebel, who is a very evil woman, and they've set up these temples to Baal. And this really angered the Lord. So now Elijah goes, he talks to Ahab, and this is what he says. Now Elijah, the Tishbite from the Gilead settlers, said to Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel lives, in whose presence I stand, there will be no water or rain during these years except by my command. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Leave here, turn eastward and hide at the Wadi Cherith, where it enters the Jordan. You are to drink from the wadi. I have commanded the ravens to provide for you there. So he proceeded to do what the Lord commanded. Elijah left and lived at the Wadi Cherith, where it enters the Jordan. The ravens kept bringing him bread and meat in the morning and in the evening, and he would drink from the wadi. After a while, the wadi dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, get up, go to Zarephath that belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Look, I have commanded a woman who is a widow to provide for you there. So Elijah got up and went to Zarephath. When he arrived at the city gate, there was a widow gathering wood. Elijah called to her and said, please bring me a little water in a cup and let me drink. As she went to get it, he called to her and said, please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. But she said, as the Lord your God lives, I don't have anything baked. Only a handful of flour in the jar and a bit of oil in the jug. Just now I am gathering a couple of sticks in order to go prepare it for myself and my son, so we can eat it and die. Then Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go and do as you have said, but first make me a small loaf from it and bring it out to me. Afterward, you may make some for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord God of Israel says. The flour jar will not become empty, and the oil jug will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the surface of the land. So she proceeded to do according to the word of Elijah. Then the woman, Elijah, and her household ate for many days. The flour jar did not become empty, and the oil jug did not run dry, according to the word of the Lord he had spoken through Elijah. After this, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. His illness got worse until he stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, the man of God, "Man of God, why are you here? Have you come to call attention to my iniquity, so that my son is put to death?" But Elijah said to her, "Give me your son." He took him from her arms, brought him up to the upstairs room where he was staying, and laid him on his own bed. Then he cried out to the Lord and said, "Lord my God, have you also brought tragedy on the widow I am staying with by killing her son?" Then he stretched himself out over the boy 3 times. He cried out to the Lord and said, "Lord my God, please let this boy's life come into him again." So the Lord listened to Elijah, and the boy's life came into him again, and he lived. Then Elijah took the boy, brought him down from the upstairs room into the house, and gave him to his mother. Elijah said, "Look, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know you are a man of God, and the Lord's word from your mouth is true." That is the end of chapters 17 in 1 Kings. I want to jump over, though. If you will, just follow me here. We don't usually do this, but I want to show you something very interesting. Remember, I told you that often the things of the Old Testament point to the things of the New Testament. In this particular case, something in the New Testament points to something in the Old Testament. We're going to go to Luke 4:24. Jesus is speaking now, and he's speaking to his people that sort of have a problem with some of the things that he is saying. And he says to them, starting in verse 24 of chapter 4, "Truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. But I say to you, there were certainly many widows in Israel in Elijah's day, when the sky was shut up for 3 years and 6 months, while a great famine came over the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, except a widow at Zarephath in Sidon. And in the prophet Elisha's time, there were many in Israel who had leprosy, and yet not one of them was cleansed, except Naaman the Syrian." So Jesus actually refers to Elijah and the story of this widow in Zarephath in Sidon, and how he saved that boy's life and he spared that widow. So it's true that there were many widows. There were many people dying of this famine. There were many people who were going through this drought and were not able to grow food because of the drought, and that's why they were going through this famine. And many people were dying. They were sick and dying. But God sent Elijah and this widow to each other and spared this widow's life and the life of her son, and provided her with plenty of flour and oil so she could continue to make bread for her household. So I tell you all the time, there are 3 ways that we look at these stories. What does it say? We have to read it. We have to have reading comprehension. If we don't read the words on the page, we never know what it says. What was it saying to the people of the time? What's the backstory? What's the context? What's going on here? And lastly, what, if anything, is this saying to us today? So let's go ahead and take a look at this and unpack it. We read here that Elijah has just told King Ahab, "Look, because you are doing this thing where you set up these idols, this temple to Baal, you're worshiping idols." Ahab was very evil. They were very evil people. He said, because of that, God's going to bring a drought. He's going to shut up the sky, and you will not see any rain here until I say, let it rain. God gave him that ability. He gave him the authority to do that. And so then God tells him, he says, "I want you to go hang out at this place called the Wadi," and it's the Wadi Cherith. This is where the water would have fed into the Jordan. It's like a pool of water that would have fed into the Jordan River. So Elijah goes and he lives there for a while, and he drinks out of this wadi. And meanwhile, ravens come all the time and bring him food and bread and meat. They bring him stuff and provide for him. So he's well taken care of. But then even the wadi dries up and there's no water there. There's no water anywhere. So God says to him, he says, I want you to go now to Sidon, to Zarephath in Sidon, and I want you to, he says, look, I have commanded a woman who is a widow to provide for you there. God had already commanded that woman. Now, whether she knew that or not, whether she was walking along one day and God said, a man's going to come see you and I command you to take care of him, who knows? But somewhere in her heart, in her soul, in her spirit, she was automatically commanded and instructed to take care of Elijah. So Elijah sees this widow and he says to her, he says, please, can I have a drink of water from your cup? She gives him a drink and he says, would you give me some bread? And she says, I don't have any. In fact, I'm gathering this wood right now to go home and make I'm going to use up the last of our flour and the last of our oil to feed me and my son. And then we're just going to die because there's nothing left. There'll be nothing left after that. We're just going to die. So he says to her, he says, don't go make something for you and your son. Make something for me instead. Make a cake for me. And if you do that, I promise you, your flour will never run empty and your jug of oil will never run empty. And you'll continue to eat until this drought is over. And she does. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking to myself, this is my last meal. Some random stranger comes up to me and says, hey, don't cook it for yourself, cook it for me. Am I really going to go, sure, why not? Am I going to trust and believe that that person is telling me the truth, that if I cook for them, I'm never going to run out of oil and flour? For some reason, she did trust. She did believe. Now, I don't know if she thought to herself, why not? I mean, we're going to die anyway, may as well. Or if she was just running on the command that God had given her in her subconscious. And either way, she agrees and she makes him the cake. And sure enough, her jug of oil never runs dry and her bin of flour never runs empty. But her son, her young son, dies. He became ill and he dies. And she says to Elijah, she says, what was the point of me doing this for you if you're just going to add to my pain by letting my son die? What's the point in all of this? Life's been hard enough and now my son is dead. So Elijah takes the boy. He takes him upstairs to his own bedroom. Elijah was evidently staying there. He took him to his bedroom. He lays him down and he cries out to God. And he says, God, please let this boy live. Have compassion, have mercy. Are you going to destroy her by killing her son too? Please, she was good to me. Let her son live. And so he lays down on the boy 3 times and life comes back into the boy. And he brings the boy back to his mother and he says, he's alive. And she says, now I know you are a man of God and the Lord's words from you are true. Well, I find it interesting that that's what it took for her to know that he was a true prophet of God. Never mind that her oil never ran dry or her flour didn't go empty, but that her son lived. That's what it took for her to believe that this man, Elijah, was truly speaking the words of God. A lot of people didn't want to believe. They didn't want to believe Elijah. They just kept believing all of the lies that they were telling themselves and they were worshiping false gods. But this woman says, now I know that what you are saying is true. It's a beautiful story. It's a wonderful story. When we look over in Luke, though, Jesus is reminding them, he said, look, there were many widows in that day, but only one of them was saved. Only one of them was spared. Elijah only went to one of them. And he's really referring to their faith. So I would encourage you, we're not going to do this today, but I would encourage you to go read Luke 4. Go read the chapter of Luke These people did not like the words that were coming out of Jesus' mouth at all. They were rejecting him just like the people had rejected Elijah. But he reminds them, Jesus reminds them of the story way back, because they knew that story. They knew that story of the widow. So I would encourage you to go check that out. I think what this is saying to us today is that we need to remember that when we trust God, when we walk in the truth of God, when we walk in what is right of God, then he will have mercy on us. He will provide for us. He will take care of us. But when we hear people who speak the truth of God and we mock them and we dismiss them, things are not going to go well for us. We need to pay attention to what God is telling us to do. And that seems to be the common theme throughout all of this. God's character never changes. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I hope you learned something today. I hope you got something out of this lesson. And I look forward to us getting to the next lesson. We will probably go back to the story of David next time we are together. But in the meantime, have a wonderful day and God bless you.